Welcome to the third webinar of the Digital Futures Project. That is a project focused on the responsible use of AI with financial support from the foundation of Google, the google.org. This is a project that is running across the whole world with participants, non-profits and universities, that is academic institutions across the world, focusing on different parts of responsible AI. And today we have with us two organizations that will go a bit into what they are doing. It's Florian Ranft from the Progressives Zentrum and Frank Escandell from OdiseIA. We were asked by the organization to organize collaborations between the different grantees. So we already had several ones from different countries, and we will still have until July every month. So last Thursday of every month at 5 o'clock Central European Time, there is a webinar until the summer. And so very excited to learn about the projects that are being presented here. Just to mention that from perspective of OdiseIA, we just finished yesterday our second hackathon on AI for vulnerable groups. The first one we did last year, which was already a success, but now we had over 100 teams participating for more than a month with 3 last final days, 60 finalists, about 10 prizes. It's all about building AI systems to have a positive impact in the world. Yeah, we focused on immigrants, so forced immigrants, minors, elderly people, people with disabilities, and also victims of climate change. And it was really a big success. And we hope, of course, that some of those results do not end up just in a nice hackathon, but into real systems that have an impact in the world, yeah? Which is also part of the responsible AI message or dream, that it's not only about making money from AI, but also solving big societal challenges. Yeah. Having said that, and welcome again everybody to this third webinar of the Digital Futures Project, I hand over to Florian, who will be very innovative with his presentation, I understand, because he will not use any slides. And so he will have about 20 minutes. Then Frank will speak about a specific project, and then there will be a Q&A session. Okay, Florian, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Richard. Thanks for OdiseIA for organizing this. Excellent. And excellent to be in the at least virtual room with many of you, some of whom that we may have met or I may have met last year in London, and good to be reconnected. I guess it's worth starting out with, even though Richard already mentioned it, I work at the Progressives Zentrum, so the Progressive Center. We're a non-profit independent think tank that's based in Berlin. And we operate as a sort of cross-sectoral platform network organization, and we're trying to bridge the gap between politics and policy and the wider kind of inputs that come from academia, civil society, and the private sector. And we work in a range in 3 pillars. One is devoted to democratic stability, democratic resilience. The other one focuses on climate change and the climate crisis. And the third one focuses on tech and innovation. It's clear that I'll be presenting some work of our tech and innovation pillar today. Sebastian should be here, who's leading this work actually, and who's leading the studies that I'll present later, but he's on leave this week, so I basically jumped in. We have a track record in seeing technological change as an economic driver for innovation, for growth and productivity, but also we see it as a focal not just instrument, but facilitator of societal progress. So in the past years and, well, not decades, it's a bit too much, but we've really identified those areas of work where we can see how new technologies are reshaping the way that our societies draw the most benefits from in health and public administration and education and so on. And since 2023, since the end of 2023, and with the help of the Google.org grant, we managed to pivot our work and significantly deepen our research on artificial intelligence. We began our project with looking into the kind of visions for the future that AI could generate. At the time, there was a gap in the political discourse, and that's where we always usually look at from a Berlin perspective, so what's happening in German politics, but also more broadly in European and international politics. And we identified a gap at that time. There was a lot of talk about AI, and the government was pushing AI on many fronts in industrial policy, in innovation and education, and so on. But it really lacked a kind of compelling narrative of how to do that and how this could be used to create benefits for society as a whole. So that was our starting point. And we did a range of different events, engagement workshops with young people. We looked at competitiveness and innovation. In more specifically, we had a look at the Transatlantic Cooperation in this context, and really used the kind of scene setting work to develop the focus and the outlines of the two studies that I want to present today, in which are really at the core of our focus of the grant and of our work more widely, which is the question of how AI can be more or lead to more social acceptance. It's a little bit of a German dilemma. I don't know whether you've been to Germany recently or whether been to Berlin or Munich or Frankfurt or somewhere else. You quickly notice that Germans are a little bit, let's say, cautious with using digital technologies in general. You may have noticed that people still like paying with cash. That people, if you've lived there, you will notice that a lot of the public administration is still done in paperwork. And that even though Germany may be kind of like, or at least used to be, an economic engine of Europe, that some of the things you may see there, unlike, for instance, in Scandinavians or even Southern European countries or in the UK or elsewhere, you might get the impression that people are a little bit backwards thinking when it comes to new technologies. And that cultural kind of mindset obviously translates also into what we at the time, and we did some polling on that, also translates into public opinion, that people are wary about new technologies, that they generally do not trust them from the beginning. And it takes a lot of work when you start thinking about, for instance, how can we modernize the way how the state delivers public services to its citizens? How can you find the public acceptance and the societal acceptance for using new technologies, and more specifically, artificial intelligence? So we're still working, we're in the kind of final stages of two studies. The first one, which looks really into or which examines the implementation of digital processes and AI tools in the public sector. And the second one, which looks at what is called the human-centered approach to artificial intelligence in the labor market. I'll start with the one on the public sector and the implementation of AI tools there. It's probably useful to understand that the current government, which came into office last spring, so in spring 2025, really identified three pillars which are central to their time in government and going forward. That's the economy and competitiveness. That's questions of security. And more importantly for us and the study, it's how to modernize the state. So how to create public services that are trusted, that are easily accessible, and given to the kind of German looking backwardness and maybe a little bit old-fashioned approach to new technologies and digital technologies, also how to modernize the public sector and how people can access it. So we're working on a study which is based on expert-led research, where we've talked to 20 experts, which uses some quantitative methods and polling, and which focuses on this question of how can we or how can the German public sector deliver and implement digital processes and AI tools. So we're looking at a number of things that are relevant to this question. There's the state-citizen relationship. There's the questions of governance, especially in a federal system such as Germany or other federal systems such as in Spain. With you guys at OdiseIA, you will know that a lot of the things and laws and policies that are enacted at the national level will have to be translated and put into practice at the local level. And in a federal state, you have intermediaries at the regional level, so at the state level, who will also have their ideas and ways of how to doing things. The question of state citizenship and the relationship and also governance and how to steer the implementation of new reforms was really driving the study. And maybe to look at and come to the point, what are some of the key findings, preliminary findings, I must say, that we identified? So if we look at our research, the quantitative polling, but also the interviews, we will find that for a long time in Germany, you will have seen that the state at the national level had an idea such as, hey, why don't we make the access to how to apply for a new passport, why don't we define this as a national goal, and then we will leave it to the federal states and to the local communities of how to implement this. This is usually how things are done in a federal system. And our research strongly points towards the direction that, given the use of artificial intelligence and digital technologies, it is much more favorable when to implement a system where the state doesn't just define the ends, but also the means of how to do this. So we're currently working on an idea of how a platform could look like, where you standardize the methods, the data, the storage, and all of this at the national level. And then you will have the federal states kind of implementing it at the state and local level. And looking at societal acceptance, one of the key issues in the German public administration system is that you have a lot of users or clients or citizens who will still heavily depend on non-technical solutions. So these are usually vulnerable people who might have hearing problems, who might not have access to digital technologies or the internet, or who might feel that things are really difficult to do online, and are simply just not used to it. Just like my grandma, but she's got an iPad now, so she kind of knows how to use the internet, but still she'll find it really difficult. But the key issue is that a lot of the resources are spent on catering to vulnerable groups. But that also means that for a long time, and that was the mindset of the public administration in Germany, that you will simply not implement any more digital and AI kind of methods and platforms to deliver public services, but that you'll really focus on the vulnerable groups and kind of neglect the majority of people who are more digitally affluent, and you have kind of like a big mismatch of spending your resources. So one thing we are currently looking into with local authorities, where we find hybrid strategies, where you use digital technologies and AI for the majority, while still providing intensified personal contact for the high frequency, we call them power users. So those who will need still a human being to be there to lead them through the process of applying for welfare benefits, of applying for a driver's license, and so on. So these two things are the kind of two main takeaways where we are now putting our focus on. Just to summarize again, the first one will be how can the state and at the national level work more as a platform, not just defining the ends, but also the means. And we are looking into like successful local hybrid strategies, which will enable the public administration sector to leapfrog when it comes to the use of digital technologies and AI, but still providing for vulnerable groups. Turning to the second study on human-centric artificial intelligence. This is a project and a study that we're undertaking in close cooperation with the German Ministry of Social and Labor Affairs. And they've been a front runner in what they call, or you may call, human-centric artificial intelligence. So this was the idea where we focus on the individual and the implementation of artificial intelligence in the workplace, for instance. And we focus on the workplace, but also more on the wider debate, and finding ways within, especially companies, of how to implement and integrate artificial intelligence models so workers and employees will feel that their rights are respected, and that they will also gain the skills that are needed to navigate these tools and to understand the impact of artificial intelligence on their workplace more widely. And what we've been witnessing, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, is that in the international consensus on AI governments a few years ago, talking about something like human-centric AI, so an ethical dimension of artificial intelligence in the sense of the protection of workers and employees, wasn't a natural debate and discourse to have. But this consensus has shifted, and we've done quite a lot of expert engagement. So we've spoken to a dozen of business leaders who are implementing artificial intelligence. We've been speaking to trade unions. We've been speaking to organizations that represent businesses. And it's quite clear that there's still, at least in Germany, an understanding and also a consensus that companies and the private sector is willing to use a human-centric artificial intelligence approach, but that the broader consensus to get a framework for something like this, which was conceivable only a few years ago, let's say at the international level through the International Labour Organization, for instance, or through other UN bodies. This may have worked at the international level a few years ago, but it's no longer conceivable. So what we've been working on is, and what we've been looking at is that now there is a vivid debate and an exchange where the model of social partnerships, so where employers and employees, so businesses and workers, at the end collaborate together, are finding more individualized agreements. So, for instance, Bosch, one of a big kind of manufacturing company based in Germany in the southwest, has drafted and is implementing an agreement on AI with its employees within the company, aims and the standards of a human-centric artificial intelligence approach. And this seems, based on our research, and we're looking into this at the moment, this seems to be a way forward where we find more individualized and local solutions of using artificial intelligence that is socially accepted and trusted by employers and employees, and that might lead the way going forward, creating the kind of trust and confidence in new technologies and using the productivity gains of this as well. So that research is still undergoing, so it's kind of like not preliminary results, but I hope it'll give you a good overview of what we're doing and what we've done. And yeah, I'll leave it by that. And I'm looking forward to any questions or things that come up in your research that we might want to consider and use. Understand that it's quite different to, for instance, a hackathon, something that probably Frank will be introducing in a minute. But yeah, I hope it's still fruitful for your work, and looking forward to maybe collaborate on any of these issues.
Yeah, thank you very much, Florian. Very, very interesting. And indeed, every grantee has its own approach to deal with the problem. I think that's also the richness of this project. It's not a one size fits all, but it's really very tailored to the specific organization. And Frank, we got a request that we can do a translation here. Is there a way
sure.
to translate
Just
directly
no
to
problem.
Spanish in the subtitles?
Not directly, but it's subtitles. Not right now live, but we can have it on YouTube later because it's going to be
Okay.
posted on YouTube. So yes.
Okay, so then let's take questions, Florian, towards the end. So I'll hand now over to Frank to present his part, and then we have surely still some time for questions.
Okay. Taking that you are looking at this, yes?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Perfect. So basically, just to put everybody else in perspective, at OdiseIA, what we did was to basically separate two main groups. One is for governance, and one is for the future of work. Okay, so my specific group, the group in which I am still a researcher and analyst, is 2.1 professions of the future. All right, so in total, we're talking about 13 different research groups. They have all delivered the final report. They are up and running in our website right now. So basically, and I'm working, of course, I'm talking on behalf of Ricardo Palomo, Dolores Abuin, Jorge Cerquero, and Jose Javier Sesma, also watching this as we speak. So basically, the report, the structure, I'm going to go through, not being so technical, but I'm going to go through this really easy for the public. because you're going to have this report available on the description when we upload this to YouTube. So basically, the methodology was on our phase one. What we did is that we interviewed via video some 35 different experts located in Spain, in other parts of Europe, and even in the United States. Okay, with a set of questions. And basically, we used for example, we used TurboScribe as a transcription software, so we could get the text out of that and we could study right on the paper. Our group analyzes this human vulnerability in the face of what the future of work and the professions are going to be like. Not only those professions, three main points basically that you would say those professions who are probably bound to disappear, those professions that are going to be or are being and are going to be transformed, and those future professions. We ventured into that sort of work that could spring into the market in now until in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. So basically, that phase one, as you can see, and the phase one was with experts, and the phase two was a public questionnaire in which we had two parts, 76 responses, mainly from the public in general and experts here in Spain. In another one that I am going to be talking about that further, it happened with another ecosystem we are quite related with. It is the MIT Generative AI of the MIT Work of the Future Institute, who happens to be a DFP grantee as well. So here are the results. In this case, you can see some of the names here. For example, it was important for us to not to go to only engineers or economists or lawyers, for example, or consultants, to have a panoply of opinions in this case. If you can see some of the names here, for example, we had a person, Sultan Isvan, for example. He's right now running for the governor of California for the Democratic Party in the United States. We have Kevin Legrander, all right. He's quite a renowned AI ethics expert, actually sharing as an editorial board the Springer Nature Link, a magazine with Idoia Salazar and Richard Benjamin from OdiseIA as well. And we have someone from Sharif Ahmed, for example, all the way in Bangladesh, an expert as well. We have people here in Spain. We have people in Latin America like Judge Maria Gabriela Bussolini. And moving forward, these are some of the results that we obtained on that phase two, because this is the final deliverable basically. And for example, what you're looking at in here on the screen, there is one disappointing piece of information we obtained, and as you can see, basically, that education is not the sector or the industry in general that is going to have an immediate adoption of technology and artificial intelligence. That was the well. Those are the facts right now collected by us, but it was disappointing that still education is lagging and lacking the impulse to transform itself and basically just generate the next the next phase and the next say offspring of professionals out there and people who are just working technical with the knowledge not only of artificial intelligence as well, but also a computational thinking. We will go into those information further on. So see here, for example, we also established a difference because hype literacy is almost as important as AI literacy. We also contrasted the study we did, the same 76 the same 76 people with all the same questions to people who are experts and the people out there just basically on the streets who have nothing to do with the world of AI. And this is amazing, actually. The people who are not experts, it is up to 3 times. They think that the impact of artificial intelligence is 3 times bigger than what the experts tell us it is. So it is very important that, for example, what we're doing in this webinar right now, that we are actually sharing with the general public, not only experts, but sharing with the general public our results. It's very important for them to have a perspective on what AI is really provoking and bringing forth in society. So, for example, on the questions about job vulnerability, as you can see, either from experts in on the first phase and the second phase as well, they were quite in an agreement. The administrative is basically the critical risk here in being repetitive, in being the job vulnerability counts. It has to do and is related to people not having enough skills to continue with the job unless you are trained on AI or having AI in your workplace. All right. So we see that executives at the C level in this case are the ones that are not at risk, basically. But you can see that's all the way up to administrative and the repetitive functions. We have seen these results on different studies. And in the most transformed sectors as well, it was not a surprise. We see financial services, banking, for example, going through all these radical transformation. You can see on the photo below one of our experts basically attending in Galicia, in the region of Galicia in Spain, attending one of these seminars there and being a speaker. Well, and the problem is that on the other side, you have the logistics as being the lowest score, having to do with a lack of adoption and a lack of adaptability in the workplace. So, meaning that logistics right now is lagging behind this. It's a very we know the industry and logistics, including, are very conservative sectors when it comes to AI adoption and technology in general when it comes to simple automation. So when it comes to quality of life improvement, because we also raised the questions about that. I mean, how is it going to improve our lives? It's not only about automating things and doing things faster or just more efficiently. How is it going to improve the life of people actually working on? Yes, administrative burden, we already know it is already doing that. It's reducing the amount of hours we're working. For example, here in Spain, it has provoked the government to actually implement a reduction on the working hours to 37 or 35, I believe, out of 40, where it used to be, when it is basically the the standard in Western countries. When it comes to block 3, and okay, and this is very important. I wanted to refer to this basically because we had this very important communication with this generative AI at MIT in the United States. 14 respondents from this very, private ecosystem of Fortune 500 C-level executives. All right, and let's get some of the results in. For example, we found that we seem to be reading the same literature and we seem to be reaching the same conclusions as our American counterparts. For example, they see that in the AI basically and the future work, it is an opportunity. It's quite optimistic, as you can see. And inevitable transformation is not a negative aspect to it. But they look at it as, well, there is no other way to go other than either you transform yourself or basically you will die trying. Some of the other data that we have, of course, It is the impact on a 5-year, the 5-year expectations that we also measured on the Spanish and European side. It is quite similar as well. There is this high impact consensus among these C-level executives from this MIT ecosystem, funded very similarly as the Spanish and the European counterparts, saying, well, it is a high impact, although some of them even said that it was extreme. It was in between 6 to 10. You're going to have more detail when you read the report that is going to be available on the description and the YouTube video. And when it comes to new professions, well, this was quite an adventure because in all the interviews we conducted with experts, what happened is that we asked them, could you tell us the name? Could you come up with or concoct a sort of a new profession that is going to be born in the next few days to the next 5, 10, 15 years, for example? Could you say, how would that look like? How would you call it? They were very conservative, not to venture into prophesizing, basically, or just predicting or just making simple forecasts. So we had to do it. We did it ourselves. And there was a proposal of names and professions of the future that we have on our own study. So, for example, when it comes to, for example, just say technology and the humanistic side, we have these, for example, what we call bias auditors. So it's going to be a consultant, not only an engineer or a data scientist that is going to be specialized. It is someone who is going to have a deeply rooted legal knowledge of the regulations. For example, in the United States, the United States, Europe actually, but also in the United States, the different states are having their own regulation right now, and even in China or other parts of the world. But these bias auditors are going to be the ones not only checking on the mistakes having been made or the corrections having to be made out of the current systems, but also having all this by design. I mean, not only regulation and compliance by design, but ethical AI by design. In ethical AI, we already know, of course, that it changes. The concept of ethical AI is not the same in China, Europe, the Middle East, the United States, or North America. It's not the same. And when it comes to job creations, yes, they're very, very optimistic, the same as the European counterparts. All right, that it basically is going to create new jobs, and there is one single feature or characteristic that we detected that you barely can see somewhere else. And I'll prove this to you. For example, take a look at this. So, for example, we all hear that the critical skills for, and we even the past hackathon right now, also organized by OdiseIA with the generosity of Google.org through DFV. Basically, they were talking about critical thinking, and they showed, well, the experts showed on the screen for all the attendants. It showed information from from very important data saying that critical thinking was number 2 or number 1 skill. Well, we found that it is not, but adaptability, yes, critical thinking, of course, AI literacy, high literacy is important, but adaptability is even more important than critical thinking itself. The skill, ability, or skill to adapt to the new changes, and that has to do also with the emotional state of being. And that was quite a shocking fact that we found on the study we conducted. And for some of the conclusions, okay, let me see that right there. There is another almost motto that we're having, especially with the hackathon, especially with the what we call now OdiseIA for Good alumni, our our alumni, basically, the attendants, the teams, basically, we were talking to them and we were telling them, yes, it has been conceived out there that regulation is basically trumping or is just basically hampering innovation, and it's not the case. Use regulation and use the law itself as a competitive advantage. All right, so you grow transparent and you are born as a company or as an NGO completely transparent and completely compliant from ground zero, basically. They because they are not used to listen to this. We also had, like, for example, like experts from Govertis, for example, yesterday talking about this as mentors to these future experts on ethical AI applied to vulnerable groups. That's what this is all about, basically. And of course, there are implementation barriers and the shortage of qualified talent, which basically had to do on the fact that, as we saw before, as we watched before, the educational system is not responding to the market needs. There is a shortage of qualified talent. The people are not going into these careers because, well, they feel lost, or the programs, the actual educational programs, need to be seriously updated. Okay, we already know about the ethical legal uncertainty. It is happening in the European Union. That's fine. We're not talking about that today. But basically, the shortage of qualified talent is creating a big problem when it comes to AI implementation. And when it comes to ethical AI implementation, is even worse. So basically, this 85%, this percentage that was discovered as well, it's not a discovery. Basically, it is also a piece of information we have found somewhere else, and we need to update the across the board, basically the competencies in the next 5 years, because of this problem we are already addressing. And also, let me just go back to, okay, well, this is the end of the presentation. We have a lot more detail on the PDF document that you're going to be able to download from the YouTube description of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank, for this interesting and thought-provoking, opinionable
Yes.
results. Indeed, it's a very interesting topic of what will be the professions of the future and how to be prepared for that. Now we start our Q&A session. So we have a question here from Natalia. Actually, I don't know whether it's a question or a comment. What do we do? Shall I read them, or can you read them? It's in Spanish, actually.
From Natalia. Okay, let me look for that. Not that. Okay.
I guess it's to you, yeah,
sorry.
this
Oh, yes,
question.
yes. Okay. Oh, well, it's not it says this person, Natalia, says basically, without critical thinking, it is absurd to boost adaptability. Well, that is quite a it's quite a comment, yes, that is true, but adaptability has to do right now. But I'll answer if Florian, of course, if you want to step in, that's fine. But basically adaptability on the jobs that are and the professions that are being worked on right now. Okay, you need to be adaptable. And yes, of course, critical thinking will come, later on as a result. But of course, you need to adapt to what you have right now. It's not that you are basically starting from zero.
Okay.
Okay. And then there is another observation here by this person, Natalia. That's why the educational sector is lost. Well, really, we have some very good comments right now. Florian, whenever you wanna jump in, of course. It is a very good observation, Natalia. Thank you. In part is because yes, it's not lost, but it's going astray right now. It doesn't know where to go. Exactly. We need to rethink that. Talking about the professions of the future, of course, we need to rethink that. And Florian, from your perspective, for example, because your studies have been on the, if I understood correctly, that they have been projected towards two main huge fields, right? One of them is the public sector. How is it? Does it affect education in this case? How do you pinpoint to that?
Yeah, that's a very good and relevant question, obviously. And the answer is that, well, one answer is that schools and education systems are currently not just adapting to AI, but in general, to how to use digital technologies, tablets, and so on and so forth, in schools. And at the moment, it's quite unclear, actually, when you look at the research, academic research, and at the data, whether pupils and students benefit from a full application of, let's say, working with laptops and tablets, and in extent then also with AI technologies, or let's say with AI tools in education, whether this brings benefit. I guess the research points that there's a balance, that you will still need some, let's say, classical textbook, sitting together doing work group kind of work. But also, obviously, when you look at adaptability, that that you need to prepare students for the workplace, and really kind of bring them into the world of not just digital technologies, but also AI from an early age on.
Yeah. So sometimes they say, yeah, for what is important for learning is the three C's, yes, or the four C's. It's collaboration, communication, and creativity and critical thinking. So it's the four C's. Yeah. But actually, there is one, and that is what we are discussing now, is more important, or is also very important, is being able to change. Yeah. So if you learn how to change, then you can keep on learning all the time. Yeah. If you learn specific things, they will become obsolete. We've seen that with many things. Yeah. Like programming languages, uh, they've changed many times. Yeah. And now with AI is also changing even at a more frequent rate. So the challenge is really that we are able to learn how do we adapt to change, yeah, as quickly as possible. So actually, there are four C's that are important in this respect. Frank,
Yeah.
I was wondering, based on your talk, if you look at the professions of the future, did anything come out in this context about the profession of being a professor or a teacher? Yeah? Was there any statement about this will completely, I don't know, of course not disappear, but will it change a lot? Or what were the opinions of the expert if something came out?
The only one that we could identify as related to education, for example, the ones that we, of course, composed and concocted, is what we call a human AI experience designer. It is a person that is, I mean, is a professional, for fictitious or hypothetical future professional that is not only going to work on the field of work and industries and so forth, but only in education, designing these experiences in which these mixed or hybrid experiences in which students not when we thought of students are not only K through 12 or college degrees. I'm talking about a student is a lifelong experience, just as Richard has stated. So basically, this expert, which is an educator as well, and has some sort of a technical background as well, that is going to understand how to hyper personalize content and not only content as an end, but a content as a process on how AI is going to be or should be implemented in X, Y, Z educational system, for example, or just high school, or just university, or just a lifelong learning. So that's the only one we actually detected from our list. It has quite colorful names, actually. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other question from the audience? So please write it in the Q&A tab. I don't see anything at the moment.
Maybe
Florian, I had one question to you based on your discussion. So one of the areas is the government services, yeah, and the use of AI. How can AI improve that? Now, combining that with your other topic, human-centered AI, I have actually two questions. One is the ethical, or the social impact of AI. Of course, if you put government services with AI, like, I don't know, if they have a right to specific social services, and you have an algorithm, yeah, checking that out using a lot of data, maybe using a chatbot. Of course, we know this AI is never 100%, so it makes errors, yeah. So it includes people who should give, or it gives people who shouldn't receive, like always, yeah. Also with people, but have you thought about in Germany? So is there an awareness in the government that they have to be very careful with that? Or do you think that is mature in that sector?
Yeah. Let me just add to your point on the four C's first, and then I'll come to the question. I think it's really important. It's not just four, but five C's. And the change aspect in education, but also in a lot of other fields, in the workplace or elsewhere. What we see is that, it's not just young people or workers who are kind of like exploring the opportunities of using AI in their kind of like, daily lives. But it's really, I'm not concerned about the individual, but more about the institutions. Because obviously, if you look at the curricula at schools and at education, and at teachers, and the way of kind of like education is delivered, and how you think about it, it's more an issue, and it's always an issue when it comes to kind of like big transformative impacts, that we as societies understand, how do we do things differently. And individuals kind of pick it up quite quickly. If I just look at my kids, they know, I don't know, they start like using chatbot, and he's like, my son is like 9 years old. But for the institutions, it's a much bigger, issue and dimension. But it also needs to rest on a kind of societal kind of, consensus and a compromise of, how do we perceive education? What are our values? How do we deliver this, and how can we, now integrate and implement AI in this change process? On the awareness of the government, yes, they're extremely aware of it, and there have been. It was in Austria. There have been kind of like trials on using kind of AI or AI systems to calculate. And if you look into, let's say, the Austrian or German kind of welfare model and system, is really complicated. What kind of benefits you get that are based on kind of like your income, your earnings, how many children you have, and so on and so forth. So there have been trials, specifically in Austria, and they've kind of failed because there have been wrong calculations. And then I think that spills over, and government, especially when it comes to really crucial, sensitive areas such as welfare, are extremely cautious of implementing any of those systems, because once you've done a mistake, and there's this big scandal, this post office scandal in the UK back in the days when there was like a faulty. I'm sure you've referenced this example plenty of times, where there's a faulty software, and which brought a lot of postal services into bankruptcy at the time, which had a huge kind of backlash, and is still being cited as the number one example of where technology failed and where the state was essentially responsible for it. And it makes people wary, and it makes people kind of like mistrust and these things. So I think we're all better advised of rolling these things out very carefully. And we do not know, for instance, if you look across the Atlantic and what's happening in the US, what effect this will have in the long term, having used AI as part of the Doge campaign to cut public spending in the US. I mean, we've got no idea what eventually the trust of citizens in the US will have in the government and using AI for these kind of purposes.
Yeah, indeed. I think indeed, yes, governments are becoming more and more aware of the potential risks. There is also this big scandal in the Netherlands with social welfare that haven't even made the government fall, and it still hasn't recovered from that scandal. I think getting 10,000s of families into poverty because of stopping a social welfare or kindergarten. Of course, it's not only the AI system that is the fault, it's how it's managed and how it's operated in a wider context. But indeed, so for government services, human-centered AI and ethical AI is very important. Okay, so we have reached the end. It's 6 o'clock Central European Time. So I would like to thank you, Florian and Frank, for your excellent and interesting presentations. Also the participants for having stayed with us for their questions. So this will be published on the website of OdiseIA and hopefully also the website of the Progressives Zentrum. We will subtitle in other languages as well. And just to let you know that the next webinar, the 4th of the Digital Futures Project, will be on the last Thursday of March, with presentations from SEPS, which is a Brussels Think and Do Think, and also, as far as I understood, from MIT in Boston. So that's not a European grantee, but it's a US grantee for the similar project, Digital Futures Project. Okay, thank you very much, and hope to see you next month.
Thanks so much, Richard and Frank. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.